I'm extremely delighted to be introducing my special guests. So I've got Louise Goldsworthy and Roland from Jigsaw24. So firstly, Louise, if you'd like to quickly introduce yourself and your role at Jigsaw24, please.
Yep, I'm Louise. I'm Head of Social Responsibilities at Jigsaw24. I've been at the company for about 20 years in kind of marketing and creative roles, and I've recently moved into this dedicated role in the last sort of 6 months.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Louise. And Roland?
Yeah, I'm Head of Operations at Jigsaw. I've been working there for 6 years. My overall responsibility is warehouse logistics as well as facilities and environmental. But over the last year, environmental has been the core focus.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And also just a gentle reminder to our audience that if you do want to ask any questions, feel free to raise your hands or directly pose the question in the Q&A box or in chat, and we will try to bring you in via audio to ask the question in person. Okay, so excellent. So one of the topic areas covered by the assessment is around setting performance targets and objectives, and there was actually 2 questions around that. So, and one of the challenges around that is if you're starting off on your sustainability journey, it can be a challenge to set meaningful goals and targets, especially if you don't have the data. So often when we think about targets, we default to the metrics that we know about, like energy and waste management. But if we don't have the data, if we've not kept a record of our performance over the sort of past few years, then actually, how do we set meaningful targets? So I've invited Louise and Roland to join me in this discussion because actually they're a DPP member company that has recently taken part in the Committee to Sustainability Programme and achieved a fantastic 5-leaf score. So if you can, Roland, if you can sort of wind back the clock a few years, when you were starting off on your journey, how did you go about setting targets and what did you do?
Well, I would argue that we're actually still in the early stages of the journey. Basically, 2021 was a huge year for everything we do in this area, and we learned so much. But prior to that, 2015, we got ISO 14001 environmental management. And then in 2019, we got ISO 50001 energy management. So that gave us a good basis for a regulatory framework for what we need to do to get an energy management system, an environmental management system in place. And as part of those assessments, you do have to set certain targets. So particularly with energy, it was very soft, really. So, energy, we wanted to reduce our consumption of things like better air conditioning, LED lighting. But we weren't really recording or monitoring anything. It was literally, well, let's do LED lighting because we know it's good, but do we really know what the effect was on the electric bill? Yes, we do. But we weren't very good at recording that and put it into a framework that we could report on.
So one could say, I think potentially, if you are starting off, because there are lots of quick wins that you could achieve, like for example, moving to LED lighting and things like that. But when you're setting targets, that in itself could be a target. So a lot of these quick wins could become your targets, couldn't they?
Absolutely, and it's about doing the practical things as well as looking at the bigger picture. I think certainly we are pretty obsessed with reducing our carbon footprint and getting to net zero over time. But absolutely, that's a big picture. And within that, there's so much you can do. And I say it's about thinking outside the box as well. And if that's possible, there's plenty of things that you can attempt to do.
Yeah, I think to add to that as well, with Roland saying it's been very soft kind of targets initially, we've, there's been a lot of learning, a lot of kind of, whether that's educating colleagues, but also being educated by colleagues in turn as well, to kind of question everything, to really understand every part of our business and what, where those sort of emissions are. And so I think the early days is definitely, it's been about kind of connecting with like-minded people across the company. And it's been very soft, but as you say, it's not always about those sort of numerical targets. I think it's been, to be able to understand things ourselves has been a good part of our journey, and definitely was the early parts of our journey.
So it does become a bit of a communications initiative, I suppose. So in that regard, I mean, what kind of targets can you set?
Yeah, so I mean, how that's, I guess that how that's evolved is from that softer perspective. We've done things like put together an action group, which has been really regular. We've made sure that we've stuck to kind of getting together. We've basically picked or invited people across the organisation who represent different parts of being able to get things done in our organisation. And a really, really important part of that is that we've got senior leadership always there in these meetings, which means that they're already buying into it, and actually we're lucky that they're leading our sustainability journey, and they're coming forward with ideas as much as everybody else is. So I think that action group has been key to us getting things moving, and we have got things done in quite a good period of time. Like Roland said, in this last year, we feel like we've achieved quite a lot. So I think having that senior sponsorship, at least a named person or the board really involved in it, doing things like assessing all the standards that's out there, because as we all know, there isn't anything a legal standard in itself, a one that you should follow, but it's really good to assess everything that's out there and look, where are they going to, what are the kind of standards that's going to really help us move our business? Because you can do certain things which are almost like box ticking to be able to say, yes, I've done that, but has it actually made a difference to progressing your sustainability journey? So it's really looking for what fits to your business. And also, as we said, learning everything we can in-house. So that doesn't mean that we don't have our blind spots checked and we're getting the right people, the sort of credible consultants and things, but it's initially learning what you can yourself and really understanding, and even moving on to something like formulating a charter, a vision, a mission. Where do you want to be? So you can get together with people across the organisation and make a list of the things that are important to you as a business, and that's obviously going to be unique to your own business. So I think there are a lot of kind of soft goals, communication as well, just communicating. So we've got things across our business, sort of signposts across everywhere. We've got a really big environmental tree where we add all the tiny incremental things that we do, and we celebrate that they're small. I don't think there's when they're small, we celebrate those just as much as the big achievements that we've made, because I think that's important. That gets the momentum and that gets everybody kind of all joined up across the business. So yeah, a lot of soft kind of things there.
Yeah, because you just mentioned quite a few quick wins there, and I think it's one of the things that I often see when I'm assessing the submissions is that some organisations have policies, but actually the policies could become a lot more when they include some of the targets, and especially if those targets and objectives are smart objectives. I know it's a bit of a cliche. I've been a project and program manager for many years, and so smart objectives were sort of part and parcel of the job. But what smart objectives means is that effectively they're specific, they're measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And actually, because often people make statements in their policies, but actually they don't use smart objectives, so they're open-ended. And actually what that means is it becomes difficult to track, because if you've got an open-ended target, then you never know when you've actually achieved it. So setting smart objectives is extremely important. And can you give an example of setting smart objectives?
Yeah, and I think it's about, to use the acronym, it's about being specific. It is about measuring what you're doing, and it's about, are they achievable, realistic, and are they time bound? Can you actually do them? So I think just at a very high level, you have to be very careful about what is right for your business. Because I know as a business, I could say I'm carbon zero, scope 1 and 2, and because we offset it, we're carbon neutral. Is that the right message to get across? Because that's not considering any of scope 3. So scope 3, a big target for us for this year, is to understand as many of those scopes as the categories of scope 3, of which is 15. How many of those are relevant to us? ever relevant, even if we don't have to off it or put it in a big target, just to understand it. So, what is the overall picture of our supply chain, where we fit in that. That, and then when we're looking at, well, what standard do we go to? We're looking at Science-Based Targets Initiative, the SBTI. Now, that particularly doesn't encourage offsetting. So your target there has to be a long-term one. It has to be 2030, 2040, because the technology to not produce any carbon isn't really there for us yet. But if your target is, okay, we want to do a quick win and we want to say we're net zero and do that with offsetting, which is great, then make sure that's what you're saying. Just be very clear what you're doing with that. And as for targets, to make it realistic, like you mentioned in your presentation earlier, is about use a metric that works. For instance, for Jigsaw, we've opened a new building last year. We're probably going to be moving buildings in London this year. Now, that's going to change our carbon footprint very much from what our baseline was a couple of years ago. So we know that our carbon footprint's actually probably going to go up this year, post-COVID and all of that in there. So again, be realistic. If you know your carbon's going to go up because of the changes you made because your business is increasing, then use your metric as something like tons of CO2 per member of staff, or tons of CO2 per million of revenue, or like you mentioned earlier, square footage of the businesses you've got it. Getting that information, some of it, certainly the square footage and, some of the more complicated information, it's very difficult, and depending on the size of your complexity of your business. But we have spent the time in finding that out, and I think that's been critical to making sure that we don't get accused of greenwashing, that we're given a realistic target of whatever we do. And that could be internal targets like energy reduction, or a large target in when can we say that we are comfortable to say that we're net zero.
Yeah, so you make a great point there about sort of transparency, because actually transparency and sustainability go hand in hand. And actually, most people, they would appreciate the transparency. So even though, in a case where you may be moving from one facility to another and your carbon emissions are actually increasing, being clear about why it's increasing and communicating that, people would actually find that a lot more appreciative. So one of the things I've come across is actually, so a simple example is, one of the questions in the assessment is around training and awareness. So when setting objectives, in some policies or submissions I've seen, basically it says, we'll be delivering training and development. So how can people convert that into a smart objective, I suppose? What are the things they could do to make that example a smarter example, I suppose?
And training on things like environmental is actually quite difficult, because say we've got 331 staff at the moment. Are you going to get all of those to train? Do you make your training mandatory? Now, what we've actually done is we've rolled out a learning management system that is part of the HR system, where we've been putting little courses on there. They don't take more than 10, 20 minutes. And people can go in and they can set a learning course and do that training. So the target there should be how many people are going to use this system, and how do we encourage more people to use it. So what we do as a follow-up to that is the compliance team will actually send out regular monthly updates on what training courses have been updated, and this all on the internal SharePoint system. What is new on there, how many people have completed the courses, and it's also encouraging staff via the managers as well, to make sure these courses are being completed. And another thing, which is a bit more of a soft training thing, is Roger Whittle, our CEO, that was very passionate. It was wonderful, but he's put it on our internal system, and it gets a lot of buy-in, because everyone can look at that and say, okay, this comes from the very top of the business, how passionate he is and how that feeds through to the culture of the organisation. So, how can we tell how many people have watched that? Well, you can actually see on the system we use that how many people have viewed it, how many people have watched and liked it. And it also, you can invite feedback on there as well. So it's about communication as well as formal training, but it's about making sure the staff are aware of it and getting their buy-in.
And I think it's about but to take that multi-tiered approach there. And, we recognise that maybe some of our staff haven't got a chance to read through Iris as much as others, and, some prefer different means. So, one of the things, again, an initiative that we've been doing in this past year is that our founders have been, as part of an induction process, have been, speaking to new employees, and they've been running through our whole kind of social responsibilities, including the environment. And, so they're getting a first-hand kind of message from our founders. And as Roland said, it's very, passionate, because it's an authentic kind of belief on their part. And then, outside of that, we've got our intranet, as Roland said, where we can publish information regularly for those. And we do see the engagement there. And, we're happy when people kind of comment on things. And then, maybe for others that are too busy, we've got, this is something we're doing at the moment. We're just kind of looking to get information like headlines on our TVs across our sites, just on a, so that they're making a cup of tea and they can, learn about what they may have missed. And, it's looking for all those different opportunities to engage with our employees and to receive the feedback from those as well. We've started surveys. So we want to know, everybody's ideas across the business. We want to know if somebody thinks, oh, there's a draft there that we missed, or, there's something, because I think every little thing, like we said, we're not afraid of, just celebrating every small incremental win. We just make sure that we're kind of encouraging to everybody who sees where we can make those gains, and communicate in all the different kind of channels that are there.
We did actually just receive a question from Vicky Harvey around how do you manage to engage all employees in the sustainability journey, and you've answered, I think, broadly that question in a very lovely way. So is there anything else that you would recommend around employee engagement? Because you've talked about the video that your CEO did, and the messaging from the founders, and you talked about the green tree as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think would support sort of employee engagement?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's about getting your staff involved in actually the key initiatives as well. And what I mean by that is some of the initiatives we put in place are a direct benefit to our employees outside of work as well as inside of work. So a few examples that we've done in the last year: installing electric vehicle chargers on site. The key one, which has been an amazing success, is we've teamed up with Octopus Energy and done an electric vehicle salary sacrifice scheme, which has had around 30 people take it up, which is around 10% of the business. That's great for the staff that want to move to an electric vehicle. It makes it much more affordable than trying to buy one. You get all sorts of additional benefits from that as well. But it's something that, a member of staff, and they don't need to be a high earner on this, it can be any member of staff, can get a new electric vehicle, a lease, and basically it's a company vehicle. And obviously that increases our internal carbon footprint and also our staff's carbon footprint. And then other things, cycle to work initiatives, salary sacrifice for loans for public transport we've put in place. I'm just looking at the screen for a few more. Flexible working. They can all massively reduce your scope 3 emissions, and also your staff's emissions. So that is a fantastic way to engage your staff.
Yeah, I think for us, it was looking at something like commuting and thinking, well, this is something that, if we want to progress in our journey, we need to help kind of employees across the business with that. So as Roland said, it's looking at those different approaches. Not everybody is in the place at the moment to get an electric vehicle, but they may be able to swap their journey to tram into work and have a travel loan to help them, take advantage of season tickets and things like that. And we can, it's something that we can continue to progress, whether, it's looking at kind of car sharing schemes or even just kind of encouraging smaller vehicles. And I think we're, you're looking at what we can do as a business in our kind of office day to day, but it's also kind of advising colleagues where they can do things in their home life as well. And it's giving that choice and understanding that everybody has different circumstances. So it's like, here's some suggestions, what suggestions do you have yourself as well, and just looking where we can continuously take those kind of figures down.
Yeah, and also we opened a new office last year, which we were lucky enough to be in a position to be able to do that. But the location of that office and design of it was absolutely instrumental. We heat we moved up, had a good idea would be. It's right next to the Park and Ride tram stop in Nottingham. It's got a lovely green area, and inside, when we put everything inside around the office areas, lots of green space, energy efficient, 100% of renewable energy. Everything had to have that procurement side of it on that build, of which I was a project manager internally. Procurement had to be the heart of what we did in that building.
So it's very much taking that. So it's very much taking that concept of sustainability by design, and implementing it in this case, with the procurement of your new office. So we're almost coming to the end of this surgery. I mean, what's next for you? I mean, what's going to be your sort of key focus area for the next 12 months, I suppose, and then perhaps beyond?
So our financial year ends at the end of May. So we're doing our carbon reporting for this year in June. So the key thing that a very good on that is our scope 3 emissions. So there's been a lot of hard work to try and understand what they are. Some of the data streams are enormous, such as logistics. We ship 80,000 parcels a year, and I went to extreme detail to get the carbon footprint for that by postcode mapping locations. Now, I'm not saying that all the candidates on this course will be able to do that, but we have just understood that greenhouse gas protocol. We've read it. We've looked at the DEFRA and the government emissions factors, understand where the data is, and also engaging with staff. So, we'll be doing staff commuting surveys, looking at all the electric vehicles just to fully understand how that move to all of those salary sacrifice electric vehicles has reduced the footprint there. So for me, as the data person around this, it's incredibly important to understand every area of it. We don't necessarily need to report offset every area of scope 3, and it's extremely complicated to do so, but we generally can. We're not far off there now. The latest piece of work I did was on our product carbon footprint from cradle to grave. Now, fortunately, we're in the position that our biggest vendor is Apple, so they do very good data on the estimated life cycle of their products, so for the carbon emissions for the life cycle of, say, a phone. And I can take that and I can extrapolate that into the amount of devices we sell and receive back from our customers and buy in. And I can get a good idea of the carbon footprint from cradle to grave. Now, do I need to report on that? Do I need to offset that? Not particularly, actually. But I think it's our mission to be able to do that and be transparent. But I would say to the delegates on the course, on this webinar, it is a hell of a lot of hard work. So do choose your partners wisely. Don't try and do it all yourself for the first year. And we have worked with a third party for our carbon footprint for the last year. But we learned so much that we're probably in a position next year that we can do the whole thing ourselves, because we're pretty much confident of what we're saying. And the key thing for us is that we won't greenwash. We will only report on the facts. And if we don't know the data, then we'll report on that. But we hope to have all that data this year.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, it's been a lot about getting our own kind of house in order in this last year or so, chipping away at whatever we can. And as we kind of, move on from that, then it becomes looking at those partnerships a lot more, and the supply chain, and where can we kind of put pressure or influence those outside, and where can we build partnerships that really help to, sort of develop. Because for us, I think the sustainability journey isn't reaching a point and it's done. It's just continuing to see, if we've done all we can ourselves on our kind of immediate business, what can we do kind of where it, everything links into us. So yeah, I think the kind of partnerships will be sort of a good place, sort of moving on as well.
Yeah, we'll be doing a lot more engagement with the supply chain and also engaging with our couriers as well, because we know that's one of the biggest carbon footprints.
Excellent. Yeah, so it sounds like a lot more focus on increasing the accuracy of your data and managing that in terms of the scope 3 emissions, and which is a great point to stop at as well. So we're just almost out of time. So with that in mind, just a quick reminder that once again, broadcasters will be sending out the CBB supply chain questionnaire. So please do keep an eye out for it, and please try to engage with the process, because it will benefit everyone. It will benefit yourselves as well as everyone in the sort of media supply chain as well. And finally, I'd like to thank Louise and Roland for providing their wonderful insights and experiences. So thank you so much for this. And I would also like to thank everyone who's attended and participated. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at abdul@thedpp.com. That's abdul@thedpp.com. And with that, thank you very much and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.